Welcome to Tech with Kaushik. This is part 15 of our complete practice question series for the AZ-104 Microsoft Azure Administrator exam. Test your knowledge with exam-focused questions covering key Azure administration concepts. Choose your answer before the timer ends, then review the correct answer, clear explanation, and practical exam tip. Let us begin part 15. We will now analyze question number 599. We are now working with AZ copy. Begin by examining the scenario. Your organization has 15 terabytes of historical log files in a local directory. A high bandwidth network connection is available. You must upload the directory recursively to an Azure Blob container by using a command line tool that creates job plan files and can resume failed or canceled transfers. Which tool should you use? Review each available choice. Choice A, Azure Storage Explorer. Choice B, AZ copy. Choice C, Object Replication. Choice D, Azure File Sync. The appropriate choice is option B, AZ copy. The reasoning is as follows. AZ copy is a command line utility optimized for high-performance Azure storage transfers. It can recursively upload local directories and uses log and plan files that allow interrupted jobs to be inspected and resumed. The alternatives can be eliminated because A. Storage Explorer is a graphical tool and is not the requested resumable command line utility. C. Object Replication copies block blobs between Azure storage accounts, not from a local file system. D. Azure File Sync synchronizes Windows Server file shares with Azure files, not a local directory directly to blob storage. Remember this distinction for the exam. Use AZ copy for scripted or large-scale blob and Azure files transfers. Use its job ID and plan file to resume an interrupted job. The next item is question number 600. Review the situation. You recently deployed an Azure Bastion host using the basic SKU to a virtual network. The deployment uses a /26 subnet named Azure Bastion Subnet. During a major incident, multiple administrators attempt to SSH into Linux virtual machines simultaneously via the Bastion host. Users report connection rejections because the Bastion host reached its concurrent session limit. You need to quickly allow the Bastion host to scale instances to support up to 100 concurrent SSH users. What should you do first to enable host scaling? Available choices. Option A. Upgrade the Bastion host to the standard SKU. Option B. Increase the size of the Azure Bastion subnet to /24. Option C. Add a public IP address to the Azure Bastion subnet. Option D. Create a load balancer and place the Bastion host in the backend pool. In this case, select option A. Upgrade the Bastion host to the standard SKU. Azure Bastion provides host scaling, the ability to increase the number of Bastion instances to support more concurrent sessions, only on the standard and premium SKUs. The basic SKU supports a fixed number of instances. Therefore, to enable scaling for up to 100 concurrent SSH users, you must first upgrade the Bastion host from basic to standard. The remaining options are incorrect because B. A/26 subnet provides 64 IPs, -5 reserved, which is perfectly adequate for deploying multiple Bastion instances. Changing it to /24 doesn't enable scaling on a basic SKU. C. Bastion manages its own public IP, adding another one to the subnet is unsupported and does not enable scaling. D. Azure Bastion is a fully managed PaaS service, you cannot place it behind your own manually configured load balancer. The key takeaway is Azure Bastion host scaling requires the standard SKU or higher. The basic SKU cannot be scaled out. Review question number 601. Carefully. Review the scenario carefully. Your company strictly enforces resource locks to prevent accidental deletion of critical production databases. You need to be notified immediately via an email alert whenever an administrator removes a resource lock anywhere within your Azure subscription. What combination of Azure Monitor components is required to create this activity log alert? Now examine the possible answers. Option A is a resource scope, a condition, and an action group. Option B is a log analytics workspace, a KQL query, and a metric alert. Option C is a data collection rule, a diagnostic setting, and a logic app. Option D is an alert processing rule, a resource group scope, and an Entra ID group. The best answer is option A. A resource scope, a condition, and an action group. The requirement is satisfied because to create an activity log alert in Azure Monitor, you must define 3 core components: the scope, which subscription or resource group to monitor, the condition, the specific activity log event, such as delete resource lock, and an action group, the mechanism used to send the email notification. B. Activity log alerts do not require log analytics workspaces, KQL queries, or metric alert rules. They run natively against Azure control plane events. C. Data collection rules are used to gather guest OS telemetry via the Azure Monitor agent, not subscription-level resource locks. D. Alert processing rules suppress or alter actions, and Entra ID groups are not directly attached to alerts, action groups are. Exam tip. Activity log alerts monitor Azure control plane events, like lock removals, and require a scope, a matching event condition, and an action group to notify administrators. Proceed to question number 602. This is a medium-level challenge. Scenario. You manage an Azure subscription containing resource group RG-Infra. RG-Infra contains a network interface named NIC Web and a network security group named NSG Web. A user named DevUser1 has these Azure RBAC assignments: contributor scoped directly to NSG Web virtual machine, contributor scoped to RG-Infra, reader scoped to the subscription. For each statement, select yes if the statement is true. Otherwise, select no. The first statement is, DevUser1 can create a new inbound security rule in NSG Web. The second statement is, DevUser1 can modify the DNS server settings on NIC Web. The third statement is, DevUser1 can create a new virtual machine in RG-Infra. The answer to statement 1 is yes. Contributor on NSG Web allows its management operations. The answer to statement 2 is yes. Virtual machine contributor includes network interface write permissions at the resource group scope. The answer to statement 3 is yes. Virtual machine contributor includes virtual machine create and related NIC management actions. Keep this examination point in mind. Effective Azure access is the union of role assignments at applicable scopes unless a deny assignment blocks an action. Now consider question number 603. Consider this scenario. You are preparing to deploy a regional standard Azure load balancer in West Europe. You have pre-provisioned several public IP addresses in the same region and need to select one for the load balancer frontend. Which public IP address configuration is supported for this deployment? The options are: Choice A, standard SKU, regional tier, static assignment, IP version 4. Choice B, basic SKU, regional tier, static assignment, IP version 4. Choice C, standard SKU, global tier, static assignment, IP version 4. Choice D, basic SKU, regional tier, dynamic assignment, IP version 4. The required response is option A, standard SKU, regional tier, static assignment, IP version 4. This is correct because a standard load balancer requires a standard SKU public IP address. Standard public IP addresses use static allocation, and a regional load balancer uses a regional front-end IP in the same region. The incorrect choices fail for the following reasons. B. A basic SKU public IP cannot be used with a standard load balancer. C. A global tier public IP is intended for a cross-region load balancer, not this regional deployment. D. The SKU is incompatible and basic public IPs can use dynamic allocation, whereas standard public IPs are static. Match load balancer and public IP SKUs. Standard load balancer frontends use standard, static public IP addresses. Let us examine question number 604. This is marked as a medium question. Let us first review the situation. You manage a resource group named RG Database that contains an Azure SQL Server and an Azure Storage account. A database administrator named DBA user currently has the contributor role at the RG database scope. DBA user requests the ability to grant a newly hired auditor the reader role specifically for the Azure storage account, without requiring your intervention. What should you do to allow DBA user to manage access for the storage account while adhering to least privilege? Compare the following options. Choice A, assign DBA user the role-based access control administrator role scope to the storage account. Choice B, assign DBA user the owner role scope to RG database. Choice C, assign DBA user the user access administrator role scope to the subscription. Choice D, elevate DBA user's existing assignment on RG database from contributor to owner. The correct answer is option A, assign DBA user the role-based access control administrator role scope to the storage account. Here is the technical justification. To delegate role assignment capabilities, you assign the role-based access control administrator, or user access administrator, role. By scoping this assignment strictly to the target storage account, you follow the principle of least privilege. DBA user will only be able to modify access for the storage account, not the entire resource group. Now consider why the remaining options are unsuitable. B. Assigning owner to the entire resource group violates least privilege by granting full access and role assignment capabilities to the SQL server and any other resources inside. C. The subscription scope is far too broad and violates least privilege entirely. D. Elevating the RG role to owner violates least privilege just like option B. A useful examination rule is this. Assign the role-based access control administrator role at the narrowest possible scope, the resource itself, to securely delegate access management. Question number 605. You have an Azure Virtual Network, VNet main, configured with forced tunneling. All internet-bound traffic is routed through a site-to-site VPN gateway back to your on-premises data center network. You deploy a new Azure storage account for local backups. Virtual machines in VNet main must upload large backup files to the storage account. You need to ensure that the backup traffic from the virtual machines to the storage account bypasses the VPN gateway and travels securely over the Microsoft backbone network, utilizing a private IP address within VNet main. What should you implement? Choice A. A private endpoint. Choice B. Azure Virtual WAN. Choice C. An Azure route server. Choice D. A network security group outbound rule. The best answer is option A. A private endpoint. The key reason is a private endpoint assigns a private IP address from your virtual network to an Azure PaaS service, like Azure Storage. This brings the storage account directly into VNet main. Traffic destined for the private IP stays securely on the Azure backbone network. Because it uses a local VNet IP, it completely bypasses the default forced tunneling route, 0.0.0.0/0, heading to the VPN gateway. The other choices do not satisfy the requirement because B. Virtual WAN is an overarching networking architecture, it does not assign a private IP to a storage account. C. Route server is used to exchange BGP routes with NVAs, not for securely routing traffic to Azure storage. D. An NSG can allow or block traffic, but it cannot reroute traffic that is already destined for the internet through forced tunneling. Remember this distinction for the exam. To access Azure PaaS services using a private IP address and bypass VPN forced tunneling, configure a private endpoint. You have completed Part 15 of the AZ-104 Microsoft Azure Administrator Exam Practice Series. Keep building your Azure administration skills by opening the complete playlist and continuing with the remaining parts in sequence. If this session helped your preparation, like the video, subscribe to Tech with Kaushik, and enable notifications for more certification exam practice content. Share your score, doubts, or feedback in the comments. I would be happy to hear how your preparation is going. Thank you for learning with Tech with Kaushik. Keep practicing, and I will see you in the next part.